And I also just want to start out with recognizing whose land we're on today. So we've got folks joining us from all across the nation this year because of our virtual event. But the Youth Climate Justice Summit is typically held in the state capital of so-called Minnesota. So we want to recognize the First Nations whose ancestral and contemporary lands comprise the state. So the Dakota, Ho-Chunk, and Anishinaabe. And we want to acknowledge this because the effects of genocide and colonization shape the everyday experiences of Indigenous individuals and communities who are very much alive, resilient, and leading change, especially in climate justice in our world. So with that, I'm going to invite you all to share in the chat your name, your pronouns, and what native lands you're joining from today. And if you're not sure, I'll paste a link in the chat where you can look up what native land you're on. We also have a few guiding principles that we'll hold today as we at and at Climate Generation would like you to keep in mind throughout the workshop. So those are recognize that everyone's voice matters, respect other people's opinions, understand that we are all learning and we all have something to contribute. Be open to new ways of doing things, listen to understand, pay attention to who is talking and who is not. Speak from our own experience instead of generalizing, use I statements, and have fun and be creative. And the last thing I'll share is just another reminder about our social media challenge. So if folks are using Twitter or Instagram, you can participate in either one or both. And we've got a few different challenges that you can enter to win a prize. The first is you can follow, if you don't already follow the Climate accounts, you've got the handle up on the screen here at @_climate. So the first one is just following our account, and we'll have a post on each of those accounts describing the guidelines for the social media challenge. So if you like that post, that'll be one. And then we've got a few others about workshops, facilitators, legislators, an organization challenge, and an action challenge. And I'll paste a link in the chat that has an explanation of this so you can keep track of what all the guidelines are throughout the day. And if you use Twitter or Instagram, you can use both if you want. Just remember to make your account public, because if it's private, we won't be able to see your post. And then also another reminder that if you're using Instagram, we just ask that you tag our account so that we can share your post on our storyboard. And that's the @_climate. All right. And with that, I will pass it over to Nayana.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. It's awesome that you're all here. As Kira was saying, if you would like to turn on your video, that would be awesome, because this is a really fun event, and it's even more fun if we feel like we're all in community together and can see each other. So yeah, okay, I'm going to present my screen. All right, can everyone see? Okay, awesome. Cool, so today we're going to talk about environmental racism and ecofascism, which is something that is kind of what got me into the climate justice world, because it's so interesting that climate change has intersections with a bunch of different systemic issues, and I wanted to share this knowledge with you guys. But also, I want you to know that I'm an expert on any of these things, and there are a lot of things that I need to learn, but I would really love if you guys asked questions throughout, because I want you to have a good understanding, and if I can't answer it at the moment, I will get back to you, maybe via email. We can connect in some other way. But yeah, I'm Nayana Gurung. I use they, she pronouns, and I am a climate and social justice advocate. I'm currently doing a campaign with Climate, who's running this event. so wonderful. And I also started a group called 197 Students for Change, which is in my school district, and we're doing some anti-racist work there. You can check us out on social media if you're interested. But yeah, I'm really excited to be here with you all today at the Youth Climate Justice Summit. This is the event that got me into kind of climate justice work my freshman year of high school, and I'm now a senior. So it's really exciting, and hopefully this can be kind of the starting point for a lot of you guys to get more involved in this awesome climate justice world. But are there any questions at this point? No? Sweet. You can always put them in the chat throughout. Okay, so Kier kind of covered some of this, but I think it would be really awesome if we could all go into some breakout rooms to get to know each other and kind of feel more in community, because this is a workshop. This shouldn't feel like a presentation. I want all of you guys to know that you can unmute at any time and share your opinion or ask a question, and there are going to be a lot of interactive things. So I want all of you to feel comfortable. So we're gonna go into breakout rooms for about 5 minutes. We're gonna share name, nouns, the stolen land that you're living on. If you already did that in the chat, it's okay, just to share again. And then we're kind of gonna get started with some ideas, just brainstorming, talking about what you already know about intersectionality. I'll put these things in the chat also after I make the breakout rooms. Welcome back, everyone. I think we should be waiting on a few more people. Awesome. Okay, would anyone like to share what you guys kind of talked about in your breakout room? What you already know about intersectionality, maybe any questions that you have about it?
Sure. Hi, I'm Natasha. In our group, we kind of talked about how we'd heard a lot about intersectionality in like the context of other subjects like feminism and racism, but not quite as much with environmentalism.
Awesome. Anyone else want to share? Okay, no worries. We have a lot of chances to share with the whole group. So yeah, I hope that kind of got you all on the topic of intersectionality and kind of thinking about your previous experiences with it. If you don't have any, that's totally fine. And that's why we're all here today. But definitely stop me if there are any clarifying questions you have, because I have known about intersectionality for a little while now, so it's possible that I'll kind of skim over some things that I should clarify. So just for the real definition of intersectionality, it's how race, class, gender, and other individual characteristics intersect with one another. And this term was coined by Professor Kimberly Crenshaw in 1989. And we are going to watch a quick video where she explains this, because she knows better than anyone else. So, okay, I'm gonna share my audio. Is this working?
Intersectionality is just a metaphor for understanding the ways that multiple forms of inequality or disadvantage sometimes themselves, and they create obstacles that often are not understood within conventional ways of thinking about anti-racism or feminism or whatever social justice advocacy structures we have. Intersectionality isn't so much a grand theory, it's a prism for understanding certain kinds of African American girls are 6 times more likely to be suspended than white girls. That's probably a race and a gender problem. It's not just a race problem, it's not just a gender problem. To encourage people to think about how the convergence of race stereotypes or gender stereotypes might actually play out in the classroom, between teachers and students, between students and other students, between students and administrators, and commit themselves to understanding that as a way of intervening and providing equal educational opportunity for all students, regardless of their identities. Identity isn't simply a self-contained unit. It is a relationship between people in history, people in communities, people in institutions. So schools do a good job when they understand that and when they commit themselves to curricular development, to opportunities in the school for all students to understand the histories that have brought us to this particular moment. You can't change outcomes without understanding how they're about. So independent schools can take the lead on that to be responsive to their student populations and to the communities out of which the students come.
Okay, awesome. So I'm gonna head back to the presentation. Sorry for being slow with some of these things. I'm not used to being a Zoom host. Okay, but we're gonna move into an activity. We've warmed up to some people in your breakout room. But basically, while we're on the topic of intersectionality, I think that this activity will hopefully bring some clarity and kind of put you in a situation where you have to make some decisions. So Kira, if you could put that first link in the chat, that would be awesome. But we're gonna break out into breakout rooms one more time, and each person can either make a copy of the Google Doc that will be in the chat, or you can just kind of look at it and remember. But each privilege on the Google Doc will cost you $100, and I'm going to go into each breakout room and tell you how much money you have. It will be different for every group, spoiler. And then we're going to come back together and debrief and kind of talk about how you made each decision and any more questions that you have about intersection. So Kira, if you could make 4 breakout rooms, that would be awesome. Yay, hi everyone. I think we're waiting on maybe one more group or 2. But one person from each group, or it's okay if not everyone wants to share, but I would love if a variety of people from different perspectives could respond to some questions, because you all did have different amounts. One group had $100, one had $200, one had $300, and then one had $400. So of course, you all had different levels of privilege in this activity based on the amount of money that you had. Oh, oopsies. Sorry, okay. So how did this activity make you all feel, having to pick different necessities and privileges?
My group had the $400, so we got to pick 4 out of the 5 ones that we wanted. So it was like not that hard because we had so many options, but it was also, all of them are good and all of them are needed and can benefit you. So having not, like, it's just taking your pick out of those things that help you and you need was like, yeah, I don't know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, it's definitely hard. What method did you all use to pick your privileges? I'm especially curious with the groups with $100 and $200 because that's a hard list of things to pick from.
For my group, I know that we just tried to prioritize the choices that were like most beneficial to long-term health. And that was like still pretty hard because like all of them are like, it was like clean water, clean air, like insurance, all of them seem like you kind of need those to survive, but we just kind of like pick things that we think were like long-term helpful.
Yeah,
I was in the 100 group and we picked clean water because we thought that was the most immediate essential need. But I definitely wish that we had more options, but that was obviously the point of the activity.
For sure. Did you all agree at first on picking water, or was there a little bit of debate around it?
I think we all agreed on water. We thought maybe home insurance was a good idea, but then we realized the water might be better.
Yeah, it's so hard. And I mean, I'm not going to ask the last question because I kind of gave it away at the beginning, but I think it's important to kind of be put in these situations where we have to decide between basic things that we just take for granted every day, like clean water and like clean air. You know, not having to worry about those things in our daily lives is a huge privilege. And so just kind of going through your life knowing that these aren't things that are just givens are really important. And yeah, hopefully this has got you thinking about intersectionality and privilege within climate change. Okay, and we're running a little bit short on time, so I'm gonna skip this activity, but I guess just like the point is thinking about how certain things may or may not be intersectional, and the Women's March for me is a pretty obvious example of like white feminism and not being inclusive. And so like here were some things that I came up with, like if the Women's March kind of focused more on race, there wouldn't be police there. There would, you know, just a lot of things would be different. And so just recognizing those things in the areas that you're in and making your daily lives more intersectional is really important. So, okay, how are people feeling about intersectionality at this point? Because it's pretty foundational for environmental racism and ecofascism. We can do like a thumb scale. Okay, cool. Thanks for sharing. If there are still questions at the end, we can go over them for sure. Okay, so getting into more like climate change mindset. So with this intersectional lens that we now have, what are some identities and factors that could determine how an individual is impacted by climate change?
Where they live.
For sure.
Their income or like color of skin.
Absolutely.
Sex and gender.
Okay, you guys are doing great. I think you guys could get all of them, but I am going to move on to, okay, so this is basically the list. Kira, if you could put that second link in the chat, that would be awesome. But we are focusing on climate change's intersections with race today mostly, but it's important to acknowledge that climate change does impact various different people at higher rates just because of these identities. And the link that Kira put in the chat is just kind of a resource that I've made with some help of other people, but it will kind of, if you look at that after the summit, it will go into some more detail about like the gender and sexuality piece of things because we're just focusing on race today. But awesome. Environmental racism. That's why we're here. Environmental racism, it's pretty self-explanatory, but it's basically just saying that BIPOC are more likely to be impacted by the effects of climate change because of systemic racism. And I have some examples here. There are so many things, and we kind of covered them in the intersectionality activity, but there are just a lot of things that are environmental racism that we might not realize. And some examples are a little bit less clear, like having access to green space, and some are more concrete. So one example is line 3. Are people familiar? Awesome. If not, that's okay. So line 3 is a pipeline that is, it's called a replacement pipeline, but it's basically double the size of the existing pipeline that is currently being built from Alberta, Canada to Superior, Wisconsin. It's extremely dangerous and is going through sacred Anishinaabe land that puts Indigenous people at risk and is breaking several treaties with the Anishinaabe people. So I don't know, it's important to recognize how many aspects of climate change and other intersectional identities that this is kind of conflicting with, because this also puts missing and murdered Indigenous women and Two-Spirit people at risk. And yeah, it's a horrible pipeline, and I encourage you to go to stopline3.org to learn more about it. And then the Rondo Neighborhood is another example of environmental racism that was in Minnesota. It's in St. Paul, near the Como neighborhood. But the Rondo Neighborhood was the largest Black community in Minnesota, and I-94 was built directly through the middle of it. And evidence actually shows that they built this highway in the middle of the Rondo Neighborhood because it was predominantly Black, which is so shocking. And that's in our own community for people who live in the Twin Cities. I'm sure you've been on that highway. So this is probably one of the more concrete examples of environmental racism, but it's important to recognize that it's all over and we can't always identify it, but it's important to talk about these things when you talk about climate change and how it impacts Black and Indigenous people at a higher rate. Okay, so does anyone have any reflections on how line 3 and the construction of the I-94 are examples of environmental racism, or kind of are examples of intersectionality in other ways? Okay, we can move on because I think I kind of talked about it, but okay, moving into ecofascism, which I wish we had more time to talk about. I'm sorry that there were so many technical difficulties, but ecofascism is a white supremacist belief that humans are parasites to our planet and that we are causing climate change, which at first, I don't know, if you're hearing about ecofascism for the first time, it does kind of seem like, oh yeah, that kind of makes sense. Not the white supremacist part, of course, but that humans are parasites to our planet. But hopefully you will realize that this is not the fact, that this is not the case, and actually capitalism is to blame for climate change. So where does ecofascism come from? What are the roots of it? It roots from white supremacy, and basically people trying to place blame on BIPOC and poor people for causing climate change when really capitalism allows climate change to happen. So 100 corporations contribute to 71% of our carbon emissions, which just goes to show that capitalism is allowing climate change to happen. And it's not actually individual actions. You driving to work is not the main reason that climate change is impacting us. And it's important to recognize that, and it's important to kind of use that in your conversations about climate change. Okay, I'm gonna move on just because we have 1 minute left. But some examples of ecofascism, there have been several mass shootings that have been traced back to eco-fascist motivators because of this like overpopulation kind of myth. And I don't know if any of you are Avengers fans, but Thanos in the Avengers movies destroys half of the population, declaring that it's the only way to save the universe from our own self-destruction, which is very eco-fascist. And the good thing is that Thanos is the villain. So not the good one in that movie, but that is an example of eco-fascism. Kira, are there other workshops that are starting right now?
We should probably wrap up, but you can take a few minutes too.
Okay.
Yeah.
If anyone needs to go, super understandable. Sorry that this is cutting into your other workshops. But then something that I heard a lot earlier in COVID was that it was helping the environment because there was a noticeable amount of less air or water pollution, which is super eco-fascist because it was saying that us being at home was kind of contributing to the lack of pollution, but really it was just corporations that were not functioning at the time, which is why. And then again, individual actions are not causing climate change. So shaming people for not eating a vegan diet or using single-use plastic is not going to help anyone because it's not our fault. And that's also very classist because not everyone can afford to not eat meat and to live a life without plastic. Okay. All right, discussion questions. I guess we kind of covered some of them throughout. Hopefully you all feel pretty comfortable, but I'm just gonna move on to action steps. Take a screenshot of this or a picture if you're interested, but like I was saying before, going to stopline3.org is a really great resource to learn about Line 3, and also you'll have the opportunity to donate directly to the front lines. Taisha Martineau is a Two-Spirit Ojibwe water protector that is on the front lines, and I would definitely recommend Venmoing them, and also you can check them out on Facebook. They have really, really amazing stuff, and they are one of the few people who are leading this fight against Line 3. And then that dock down there is the on-ramps for the movement to stop Line 3, and there are some more resources in there. I'm sorry that I had to rush at the end there, but it was really, really amazing to see all of you in this workshop. Thank you for turning your cameras on. I'm going to put my email in the chat, so if you have any questions, we can chat there. But yeah, I hope everyone is doing well. I hope you're having a good day at the Youth Climate Justice Summit. And if you have any questions and want to stick around now, definitely go for it. Otherwise, if you have to go elsewhere, I totally understand.